Hey everyone, welcome. Welcome to the first session on the first day of RejectionCon 2025. My name is Bob Miller. I am the Chief Operating Officer of a company called Global Data Systems, which is a MSP, MSSP out of Lafayette, Louisiana. And I'm also the founder of IR Game, which is an instant response platform. And it's my privilege today to be able to introduce Matthew Pincus, and he's going to be giving us a talk about from Burnout to Brilliance. Matt, why don't you go ahead and introduce yourself and step right in?
Hello and welcome everyone to RejectionCon. First presentation, first day is a lot of pressure. Hopefully, I live up to it. I know I attended a lot of the sessions last year, and it was a great event. And I am really looking forward to the event again this year. Thank you to Wes, Kyle, Alex. Thank you to Dean. Thank you, Bob, for the introduction. Thank you to the whole team for putting it together. I know a lot of work goes into it. It's a labor of love. And I think it's going to be really valuable for everybody who's here to listen in. My session today is about from burnout to brilliance. It's taking your tech support team and kind of getting them past that big burnout barrier. I'm Matthew Pincus. I'm the co-founder of Helped. We are a third-party tech support provider, primarily in the MSP space. We've been doing this for about 3 years, and the bulk of my career experience actually came before that when I was at a fiber optic manufacturer. Add-on Networks actually was a company acquired by Halo Technology Group. Typically, when I give a talk like this, I try to say you should listen to me because I was successful. I joined that company Add-on when it was about 15 people doing about $3 million in revenue a year. And a decade later, we exited 400 something employees at the time for over $700 million. So it went phenomenally well, but I'm not here to talk about, or at least my pedigree today is not because of my success, but rather because of my failure. We did well as a company, but personally, I was burned the hell out. And that's what I'm here to talk about today. What I experienced, what I saw, what existed across my team is something that I think it's really important that you as business leaders can try to avoid. And if you're proactive about it, you're going to have a lot of success. You're going to be making some small investments in your team, in your people, in your culture. And doing so is going to help you create a sustainable, scalable, successful business. So the reality is burnout happens anywhere, anytime. Sometimes it's going to be something that's out of all of our control. COVID led to a lot of stress and a lot of burnout. During COVID, kind of towards the tail end, there was that big Kaseya ransomware attack. I think it was like July 2021 or something. So somebody may have already been stressed out and just overwhelmed by needing to deal with just this one-off. Or as an MSP, especially if your business is a little bit smaller, you probably know that feeling of always being on call, of never being offline. Maybe you are the help desk. So when that call comes in at 8 o'clock on a Friday night, on a Saturday, Sunday afternoon, you're the one who's taking that. That compounds, that wears you down. You're putting in those long hours, those long days, those long weeks over and over, month after month, year after year. It wears you down. For me, that last company that I was at, I live in California now and previously. I had spent the first 5 or 6 years of the business out of our office in California. We were acquired by a PE firm, and I had the opportunity to go build our business in Europe. So I moved over to England, just outside of London, and it was a difficult choice to make. My wife was pregnant at the time; she was about 3 months pregnant when we moved. We made the decision basically right around when we found out she was pregnant. So that inherently carried a bit of stress. Then our daughter, fortunately, healthy, wealthy, healthy and well, was about a year old when the lockdown started. And in England, they were even more strict than they were in America. And then I don't know how much it made the news over here, but the same time we were dealing with Brexit over in England, which was its own soap opera, and we were a manufacturer. So for us, the logistical challenges presented by, we've kind of seen similar issues with tariffs here recently, but the logistical issues of needing to ship stuff internationally when previously it was smooth and seamless. Now, suddenly, England no longer being in the EU made that near impossible. It just kind of compounded more and more on me. And on top of all of that, I had my own health issues to deal with separate from COVID. So it was something where I was trying to get to the end. I was trying to get to the finish line in a world where there was no finish line. And that is a recipe for burnout. So what is burnout? You know, there is an official definition. It's chronic stress that you're basically unable to manage. It means you're low energy. You kind of have trouble focusing, getting in and doing the things that you need to be getting done. But I think most simply, the easiest way to describe burnout, it's just when you can't bounce back the way you usually do. You know, when you're young, you could go out to those networking events, go to those social events, drink, party, wake up, you have the energy the next day. As you get older, that gets harder and harder. And that's just because your body's getting a little older. You have that physical drain, but that's also the case mentally. And burnout is the exact manifestation of that mentality. It's the fact that you finally made it through that massive project. You shipped whatever it was you needed, you deployed, you finished patching whatever it was. You finally got that done on Friday, and you have that weekend to recover. And it used to be that you would take the weekend off, have a good time, go do whatever you do, play softball with the guys, take the kids to church, whatever it is. You come back Monday refreshed. But when you're burned out, you don't bounce back like that. You never quite restore yourself to where you get back and ratchet up so that you're ready to focus the next time. Which the impact of that should be pretty clear, pretty obvious. But in case it's not, or if you're having trouble thinking about how you as a leader are impacted by the burnout maybe of your team and your employees, let me just explain where it will impact you. So first, I feel like there's a term that was kind of a big buzzword last year, quiet quitting. People who just kind of do the bare minimum. They just kind of check out. That happens because they're burned out. They put in all the effort and it didn't go anywhere. They were racing to that finish line that never really came, and they just can't do it anymore. So they're just much less productive. Or I don't know if it's better or worse. You might have an employee who just quits out of nowhere, just unexpectedly. One of your better employees just up and decides, I don't want to do this anymore. You can't talk me out of it. I'm gone. You're stuck scrambling to cover for them. Or maybe somebody seems as productive as ever. They're still on board. But when they're talking to your clients, when they're talking to your customers, they just don't have that smile in their voice. They're just a little bit more negative, a little more abrupt, a little more harsh. It's hard to even pick up on that, but what it means is you're giving that client a negative experience because somebody that they used to enjoy talking to now, it's kind of a bad experience because they're kind of a negative person. So the key is that you're going to need to be able to recognize it. We're going to talk a little bit later about how we can combat it and how we can even preempt it, because that's the key thing. But before you're even able to do that, you need to be aware of what it looks like. And it's not really always easy to notice. You know, especially in tech, people aren't necessarily the most flamboyant and charismatic. So there could be one of your employees that's just a little bit less charismatic than usual, and it could be again tough to notice. But it might be a sign of burnout. You might have an employee who worked a full year or 3 or 5 and never took a sick day. And all of a sudden, you notice that they come down with the sniffles and they're out for a couple days. Or maybe there's that project that you've done 100 times. You're updating all the computers at your one major client. Usually, it gets done in 3 days. But now the one employee who leads that up, it's taken 5 days, hasn't quite gotten it done for some reason. Or maybe it's not even about work productivity. Maybe it's just you're used to coming into the office and there's that guy who's always going to concerts. He's really into indie rock, or he loves to go play in Magic the Gathering tournaments. And he's always coming in and telling you about the band that he saw or the tournament that he won. But now he's not doing that so much anymore. It's kind of like the lights are out a little bit in his personal life. And while you can recognize it in individuals, it can also be similar but magnified when it comes to teams. I mentioned earlier, you might have somebody just unexpectedly leave. If you have one person leave really for no obvious reason, it could be a sign that the stress is spread throughout the team and that person was just the first to sort of crumble, to feel that burnout across all that stress. It could be something where you're talking about help desk here, your ticket volume is as high as it ever is, but your response times are a little bit slower. It might be that you feel busy, you feel like there is more of a backlog there, even though the volumes aren't any higher than they used to be, just because people across the board are a little bit less productive. No one's noticeably underperforming. Nobody's at 60% of what they used to be. But if everybody's at 90 or 95 and it's across a team of 10, 12, 15 techs, that really compounds. And so what you might see is that you'll pick up a sign in one person, or you might notice that again somebody leaves and you think it's just isolated, but you need to be able to recognize that there could be a number of small, almost unnoticeable signs in those individuals that are compounding across the team, that are spreading like a contagion. And the concern is that if you don't recognize it, then you could be in a situation where it could go from a trickle into an avalanche. And then you're kind of behind the eight ball. So if you want to be able to recognize it, the first step is going to be able to understand what's causing it. I guess the first question to ask yourself, is it my fault? If I had an employee leave, I think that's always a great example, because I think it's one of the most painful things. We know that our team isn't going to be our team forever. We want the best for our employees. We want the best for our best employees, the ones we like the most, the ones where it hurts the most if they leave. We want continued success for them. We know that they might not always be with us, because they might have some great opportunity come up that we have to sadly encourage them to go and take. But what happens when that's not the case? What happens when that great employee leaves without leaving for a great opportunity, when they just leave because they just don't want to be there anymore? Is it your fault? Maybe. I mean, is it a heavy workload? Are you asking too much from your employees? Or maybe even more than a heavy workload, are you putting people outside of their comfort zone? You have that one great tech, you have that one network engineer who's a bit introverted. You've put him in a position where he has to talk to customers day in, day out, every day. And maybe he's great at what he does, but he's not a people person. And each time that he has to get on the phone 4, 5, 6 hours a day, talking to people, getting out in front in the field and working with people hands on, it kind of burns him out a little bit. You're just putting a little bit too much on his shoulders, too much that he just can't handle. Is it the long hours? Is it something where people are on call? You technically have your staff there from 8 to 5 every day, but you're a small business. You have clients that are calling in at 5:30, at 6, at 8 on Saturday, and somebody needs to be there to respond to those calls, to respond to those tickets. So maybe the long hours aren't official, but maybe you're expecting longer hours than you're really realizing. Or tight deadlines. There's always something more to do, but is every project urgent? Does this have to get done by Thursday afternoon? And then sometimes, yes, this project does have to get done by Thursday afternoon. It's life or death. It really is urgent. But then when that one's done and the employee comes back on Friday morning, is there another project that absolutely has to get done by Monday afternoon? Because if they're going from one thing to the next with no chance to breathe, it's kind of your poor planning that's putting them in that position and creating those tight deadlines. And then lack of resources and lack of management support are kind of two sides of the same coin. Does your team have what they need? Is it, licenses? Is it tools? Is it authority? Is it something where your technicians, your team is empowered to make the decisions that they need to make? Are they able to do the things that they need to do? Or is every step of the way stopping and waiting and asking for permission and jumping through whatever hoops you've put in place because you need to be controlling. You need to make sure that they're not making mistakes because you know best. And so it makes sense that you're quick to respond. You're always there. You'll tell them yes quickly. It's not going to cause a burden for them, but you're still going to ask them to do something where the reality is they're smart and capable enough to do it themselves. you might not think that's creating any sort of burnout, any sort of chafing on them. But those little delays, getting people out of the flow, out of a rhythm, forcing them to stop and go out of their way for needless little things means you're not really supporting and empowering them. And again, it's death by a thousand cuts. It's those little things that are adding up. And the unfortunate reality is that tech support is thankless. If you're in IT, you're stuck in the middle. You are reliant on the systems you're deploying, and no matter how robust and perfect they seem, there are outages. There's always something that goes wrong. User error knows no bounds. So it's kind of impossible to plan a resilient enough system that there's never going to be a problem. And when you're the IT guy, that user problem is your problem, and you're jumping from one thing to the next constantly. There's little time to kind of stay in the zone, to stay in the flow, and it feels like it never ends. Again, we talk about the idea of kind of hurtling towards that finish line, and I had some sense of what that finish line was in my last business. But if we're talking about some help desk technician, level 1, level 2 tech, what is the finish line for them? Really, the only finish line is leaving the job, going to another job. And they might see one of their peers go off to another job, and they might recognize that that's the finish line. But for you as the organization leader, that's not the finish line that you want. This is a challenge that there is no real way to combat the fact that it is the endless sort of treadmill. Um, and really just across the board for your team, you need to be placing those demands on them. If you're not providing support around the clock, are you going to be able to provide adequate support to your clients? Well, that means that those long hours are sort of necessary. There are ways around it. We'll talk about that. But the reality is that you need to be providing that support. You need to be providing that support on a budget. You don't have a limitless budget to provide the most perfect support in the world, because you're running a business. You need to make a little bit of money yourself. And then all the while you have these techs in a great place. And then let's say somebody more senior leaves. Do you have somebody on the bench as one of your lower level techs ready to step up and move right in? Maybe, maybe not. I guess we're going to talk about some of the reasons that you need to be proactive about this. And one of those is that if you're able to create that career development trajectory, on the one hand, you're empowering your employees to leave and go do something else. But on the other hand, you're also setting them up so that they know there's a role here for them and there is that growth opportunity. No matter what, people are going to leave. That's just the nature of modern society. I think the average is something like 2 years at a job nowadays. But tech support, especially just because of the nature of how high burnout it is, you're always dealing with that. And I've witnessed it firsthand. I remember there was a day where our office in England was very open floor plan, and then I actually had an office, but it was all glass walls. I could see straight out. I could see everything going on in front of me, and the little pod of cubes right across from me was sales and marketing, and then on the far side of that was our support desk. And I remember at one point I noticed that somebody clicked off their phone and just kind of leaned back and just eyes closed, look up at the ceiling, took a deep breath, let out a big sigh. And then they, kind of gathered themselves, steeled themselves, I guess, for the next issue they were going to have to deal with. And then they jumped right back in. And it registered in my mind that that's a person who is a little bit overwhelmed. And actually found out that same day, and this is why it's stuck in my mind now, these couple years later, that the person sitting next to them actually put in their notice that very day. And the person who let out that big sigh probably found out an hour later. And they were already in this place where they were overwhelmed. There was too much. This was nonstop. They couldn't handle this. And now they were going to have to handle even more, because their buddy, their peer, the guy right next to them, the guy who's going to war with them every day, wasn't going to be there anymore. And maybe a backfill was coming. Maybe that backfill would be great, but we're not talking about a week, 2 weeks, a month from now. It takes a while to backfill, to train. We're talking about right now, tomorrow. As soon as that person's out the door, it's exhausting. I saw that firsthand, and I knew that we had a problem. The people in IT generally want to be in IT. The people who get into IT because this is a hobby that they choose to pursue, and it's a hobby that they choose to monetize. The people who are in IT because they've always loved technologies, computers. You hear people talking about being old enough to have that Apple IIe once upon a time. For me, it was an Apple IIGS that I was fortunate enough to get because my grandparents had saved up some money to open a bank account for me. And I guess back in the early 80s, banks did this thing where if you opened an account and put $1,000 in there, you got a computer. That set me down the road of having computers all my life and an interest in tech and yada, yada, yada. Here I am in IT. But being in IT just means that you do the thing that you love and constantly deal with stumbling blocks put right in front of you. There's always more to know. That when I had that Apple IIGS, I don't think I had internal hard drive. I think it just had the 5.25-inch floppy drive. And since then we went from the 5.25 to the 3.5 to the internal hard drive to the STDs to all the SSDs to all the cloud drives. There's always advances in technology. There's always more to learn, and it's that double-edged sword because you're curious, you're in tech. Your team got into technology because they love all this stuff, but there is so much advancement, and that just applies to the hardware, to the hard technology, to the software, to the tools that are out there. AI, look at all the things you're able to do with AI, trying to keep up with which the best AI model is this week. It's impossible. So then you try to specialize. You find the area that you love the most. Again, I worked in fiber optics previously. So for me, it was more, network design, network architecture, network engineering. You become a specialist in that. But then when you're working on the help desk, maybe you're the guy that gets tapped for all the network issues. But then when somebody comes up with, some random issue, their password's locked. I need to go back and remember, what do I need to do to even get into Azure AD to go and unlock the password? So as much as I want to be specialized, I'm trying to find that balance. And then again, IT is kind of nonstop. It's hard to have that work-life balance. Lack of mentorship. It's something where when you are on that help desk, who do you look towards? Who is that beacon that's going to show you what career growth looks like? Is it the person who went from a level one to a level two? It's not as though, although every employee wants this, it's not as though within 3 6 months you're going to be jumping up to the next step. It's not as though this is a ladder with 100 steps where every 3 months in your career you're going to be taking that next one up. So you have this passion, you have this thing that you enjoy doing, and it's still a grind just to keep up. And so you, as a leader, have this responsibility to help your team, to make them feel good about them, to remove those barriers, to make things better for them. And I just want to talk about a few of the things that really, these are general enough that they work across any sort of business that you are able to do to support your employees. I think the first and foremost is to be accommodating. If you have everybody working in the office full time, whole separate issue. We'll talk about that a little bit later. But then one day, one of your employees calls up and says, "Hey, my kid's sick. I need to work from home today." What's your thought? Do you let your employees work from home when they need to take care of a sick kid? It's kind of reasonable to say, "Yeah, I get it. Don't worry about it. Take care of your kid. Take a sick day. Don't sweat it." Or maybe you do let them work. If you do let them work, do you think they're going to be as productive as usual? Are they going to be distracted, less productive? Yeah, today they absolutely are going to be. But then tomorrow, that kid's better. They're relieved. They know that they have a supportive place to work. They know that when life happens, their job lets them accommodate their life. And really, that small cost to you, letting them work on being 70% as productive for that one day when they could take care of their family, pays off to you in having the continuity. And that's something we'll talk about, the value of actually keeping your employees rather than needing to find new ones. And then time off, that sick day is an example. That's sort of a negative reason to be taking time off. But how about a positive reason? I gave the example of that employee who loves going to concerts and they can't stop talking about that Taylor Swift concert that's coming up on Thursday. Hey, I bet you're going to be out late at that concert. That's going to be a lot of fun. Why don't you just take Friday off so you can sleep in a little bit and recover? Why don't you, as a leader, encourage your employees to take that time off so that they get that chance to recharge, so that they don't come in dragging, exhausted, needing to push themselves a little bit harder on that Friday when all they want to do is just relive that awesome concert they went to the night before. And then workloads. We're all trying to maximize our success. You're hiring someone to work for you, and in a year there's 52 weeks, but you're giving them 3, 4 weeks of vacation. Are you giving them 48, 49 weeks of work over the course of the year? You giving them all 52? Or are you expecting them to kind of just condense it down? This goes to the idea of deadlines as well. Is everything from one sharp deadline to the next? Are you giving them ways to think that their workload is reasonable? That there are busy times, but all they have to do is get through that busy time, and then they're going to have a little bit of the slower time. Last one on here, leadership modeling. This is what I think personally is the most important, is demonstrating to your team that it's okay to not be a machine, because your employees look to you, whether you realize it or not, as the example. If you are always there from 7 a.m. to 7 p.m., 5, 6, 7 days a week, 52 weeks out of the year, well, they might know, hey, it's your business, it's your responsibility, and they're not paying me enough to do that. But at the same time, that's the work culture that you're setting. You are establishing that as the expectation. Whereas if you say, hey, I'm going to that Taylor Swift concert on Thursday night, guys, do you think you can hold down the fort without me on Friday? Then they understand that it's okay for them to do the same. So for you to model that work-life balance goes so far in making sure that your employees understand that they're allowed to have a little bit of that balance, that they're allowed to take that time to recharge, they're allowed to not burn out. So I mentioned the work from home thing, and I know this is a hot button topic. We keep hearing about different major corporations with a return to the office mandate. I mean, Amazon was pretty recent. I think they then walked it back, and there was some debate about whether they were just using that as a tool to figure out who they should lay off and blah 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 blah. Well, in MSPs, you can see the data here from to 2 years old at this point. So these numbers might be slightly less as maybe more and more people go back into the office. But across the different levels of the help desk, there are the majority, regardless of which level, able to work at least hybrid, if not fully remote. And I'm curious what everyone here's opinion is. Do you let your techs work remote, fully remote, couple days in the office? Does it matter which level they are? If you're level one help desk guy, if you're a guy who's just doing a bunch of password resets, basic patching, simple stuff like that, does it matter where he is? You can see here the higher level tech actually is more and more likely to be fully remote, maybe because they have more authority in their career, more ability to go be mobile and take another job that gives them more of that flexibility. What does it matter to you? You might have an opinion about whether the staff needs to be together or not, but have you actually quantified that at all? Have you measured whether people are actually more productive when they're in the office? And is there a real reason to have people in the office? And I use in the office kind of as a generalization, because what we've actually seen is that there's a big demand now for especially kind of mid-sized businesses that don't have regular IT demands, the sort of people that you might be co-managing with, or the ones that you maybe talk out of co-managing into being fully managed. They want an IT guy on site a certain frequency. They want to have, maybe you just have a tech who has office hours for a half day every week or a full day every month or whatever it is, so that anyone in that office knows that if they have an IT problem, hey, save it for next Tuesday because John's going to be in here, and you can walk over to the IT guy's desk and get the help that you need. If you're going to have people coming in, make it mean something. Think about why they need to be there. If it means being on site, if it means being in the office, there needs to really be a reason that you're doing that. And I say that again because that flexibility of working remote lets you accommodate your employees. If the employees understand why they need to come in the office, if it means something that they're coming into the office, then it's less of a detriment because they understand the value of it. And again, I talked about the key to me being starting with yourself, leading by example. You don't just have to tell people, oh, hey, you should take vacation. I never do, but you should do it. You should actually be the person leading by example and taking those vacations. Your actions are the ones that everyone else recognizes as the company culture. And so, what you need to do is make those boundaries, have those rules. When I moved over to England, and again, pregnant wife, and then I had a newborn, the rule was that I needed to be home by 6 o'clock every night, no excuses. I'd be home at 6 o'clock. Wife and baby would be in bed by 7:30. I'd be back online talking to the folks back in California. It was the middle of the day at that point there. But I had those boundaries to make sure that I had some of that work-life balance. You need to have those same boundaries for yourself so that you can model them for the rest of your team, so that everybody can understand what it takes to actually have a healthy, sustainable workplace. If you are there demonstrating what it takes to have that smile on your face every day, to stave off the burnout by having that balance, then your employees are going to recognize that. They're going to appreciate that you're setting that example, and you're normalizing not being burned out. So what's the point though? Because you can just work, 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 and have your employees work, work, work. And right now, with the job market, I mean, heck, I could open a post on Indeed and have 200 applications by the time I finish talking here. It's amazing. But that still comes with a pretty high cost. If you are going to get your employees, you want to keep those employees. If you maintain that positive culture, that means you don't need to have that Indeed post. You don't need to go through all of those resumes. You don't need to go through how many ever interviews there are. You don't need to go through a second or a third interview, which if it's a level one tech, you probably don't need more than one interview. But each one of those steps is just a drain on resources. And talk more about that. The flip side of that coin is that when you accommodate people, they are more likely to stay. You don't need to have them come into the office. They are happier. It saves you money. It's win-win all the way around. And you can accommodate for the demands put on your team by planning. I guess more than anything is the best way to summarize this. You are having your team, you start offering 24/7 service. You need to have your team be on call. How's your team going to receive that? When you hire someone, do they know that they are going to have an on-call schedule? Well, maybe what you need to do is figure out when those on-call calls tend to happen. Is it that, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday night are the hot times for whatever reason? Maybe you need to staff appropriately and have some sort of shift where you have somebody working 12 to 9 instead of having everybody 8 to 5. Or maybe this is where you outsource just so that maybe your team still needs to be on call, but only on call as a point of escalation. Maybe they just take the one out of every 5 calls that comes in that whomever you're outsourcing to isn't able to get resolved. That way they know they're on call, but they know that the interruptions are sparing. It's realistic deadlines. It's across your whole team, whatever it is that you're trying to achieve. Just make sure that they know that what you are trying to achieve can be achieved within a reasonable time frame, and that it's not going to be one deadline to the next. Then incentivize them. If you have some internal metric, if you want your CSAT to be, 98% or whatever it is, well, then why not reward the team that's responsible for driving that number? Yeah, making a customer happy is going to be the responsibility of more than just any one component of your business. But if you're looking at your help desk and you're taking surveys after every completed ticket, if they achieve an average of 9 out of 10, 9.5 out of 10, whatever it is, they should get a little bump for that. There should be some motivation for them. Yeah, it's going to cost you a little bit extra, but yes, I'd love if every person did their job just because they want that feeling of a job well done. The reality is people want to get a little bit of compensation. You might be paying somebody 60 grand a year, but if they know that every quarter they can get an extra $500, $2,000 over the course of the year, that still gives them that slight motivation to just work a little bit harder and feel better about the work that they're putting in. And all of this goes down to the resource allocation. Talking is hard. I mentioned at the beginning, it's about planning. It's about knowing what you need to achieve. Um, Dean of Empath and Rejection Con fame always talks about onboardings and how yeah, as an MSP leader, you would probably love to be adding new clients every day, but that's not realistic. That's not something where you can reasonably onboard a new, I mean, unless your clients are all one man shops, you're not going to be able to be onboarding, a client every week unless you have dedicated folks able to do those onboardings. You need to understand what your capacity is, and if you want to increase that capacity, you need to be allocating resources in order to meet that capacity. And by doing that, by making sure that you understand what your parameters are, once our ticket volume hits X, we need to add another technician. When you have those plans in place and you live up to those rules that you set, it means your team understands that when it gets a little busy, there is that end in sight. Maybe it's not a finish line per se, but hey, we're getting busier and busier, and just a little bit busier still, there's going to be that new technician alongside of us. That's going to be the release valve on all this pressure that we're feeling. And if you experience that burnout and somebody leaves, this is what you're going through. You're going to have to spend that time, and we say here that hiring costs are 3 to 4x somebody's salary. It's not just because you're going to have to pay a recruiter. If you're looking for a more niche position, then yeah, there's going to be some cost of recruiting. But just think about how much time and effort goes into creating the job spec, posting it online, sifting through all those resumes, doing all those interviews, second interviews, if that's what it takes. All the time that goes into that, there's a real cost to doing that. That's opportunity cost. You could be doing something more valuable. Then you're paying that technician. And then you can see jumping ahead to the very end, if you ever need to replace a technician, sometimes you have to pay a little bit more. You hired someone back in 2022 at what was a good rate then, and you've given them 3 to 5% raises now every year since, but maybe the market rate's still at $10,000 more than what you're paying that person in 2025. If you let that person go after 3 years, the person that you backfill with is just going to cost you that much more. And then once you bring that new person on board, you're going to have to train that person. And that training, just the resources, the time that goes into that, has a substantial cost in and of itself. And then productivity, you bring that person on board. Day one, they're not going to be as adept. Typically, it takes about 12 weeks, it takes about 3 months to get fully up to speed, to get to that 100% productivity. Month one, they might be at 25% productivity. And you might say to yourself, no, we're hiring super qualified people. They're all more than 25%. Well, there's still the fact that they are not at 100%. Maybe they are at 50%, but who's training them? The person who is at 100%, who's one of your best techs, who has to take time out of their day to go train the new guy, they're no longer 100% because they need to commit their time. That's another resource. That's more of a cost to you because that person is going from 100% to 80% just to kind of shepherd along your new person who, whether they're 25, 35, 50%, whatever it is, isn't quite as good as the person that you lost. Month two, maybe they're 50%, month three, 75%. They will ramp up, but you have spent, a month or two's worth of salary basically not getting that full productivity. And typically the cycle is 2 years. And this is the case in IT as well. Employees tend to stay at a business for around 2 years, and then you start the whole cycle over again. And your mandate as a leader is to simplify that, is to make it so that you reduce your turnover, you reduce that burnout, because well, it's in the benefit of your employee because you're setting them up to thrive and succeed in their career, but it's benefiting your business because it means you don't need to go through this cycle. You don't need to deal with the lower productivity, the higher costs, etc. So, ways to do that, as I mentioned, outsourcing. Not here to shill help again, outsource third party US based tech support. But one thing that I've seen in my career, not just in this space, but outsourcing is a way to make an investment in your employees. You have a solid core team. You have that team that from 8 to 5, or maybe you have the one guy from 12 to 9, do a great job. And you want to tell your clients they can call in with tickets anytime, 7 days a week, whatever it is. Putting your techs on call is a burden, is a drain. If you're outsourcing that, you're reducing that. You are investing in making sure that your good techs stay good, don't burn out, that they are satisfied with everything that they are doing on a day-to-day basis, that it's not too overwhelming. It gives you a way to basically spend a little bit more to save all the money. I'll jump back a slide. You spend a little bit more to make sure your team's not overburdened, and you can avoid all the costs of going back through this cycle over and over again more frequently than you need to. Then you want your people to succeed. I give that example again of that great tech that you'd hate to lose them. but the onus is on you to make them stay. You want to help train them up. They start as a level 1 technician, but their interest is in networking, network design. And so you want to give them the opportunity to train. You want to maybe not give them mentorship yourself, but encourage them to seek mentorship elsewhere. Join peer groups. You take your service manager and you send him to HDI's support world to meet with other service managers and see exactly what best practices are across the community. You are giving them an opportunity to meet leaders in the industry and find a mentor. You're encouraging them to seek those outside sources. And that helps them build their network. It absolutely means that the day when they are able to leave might come sooner. But what you'll find is that by giving them all of these tools, you're also building this loyalty. You're making them a better employee. You're empowering those employees, and they appreciate that empowerment, and it makes them want to stay. And you encourage them to advance. When that bigger company, especially this applies, when that job opens up, there's probably somebody you have in mind that you'd like to see fill that role. You want to encourage them to advance. You want to suggest that your employees get that next CompTIA cert. Somebody already has their A plus, you encourage them to get their security plus, their network plus. You want to encourage them to grow and take on more so that when the need opens up, you have that deep bench. You have that level 1 tech who's ready to be the level 2, level 3, go into the field, whatever it is. And then last, give feedback. And this is an area where personally it's always a weakness of mine. I go out of my way to try to tell people that they're doing a great job. And I do that because I didn't always do that. But the truth of it is that people want to hear they're doing well. They want to hear that they're punching above their weight. That thing that you took on, wow, you did such a great job. I didn't expect you to be able to do just so well with that. You really surprised me. I'm impressed. I'm proud of you. People just they love to hear that, and that makes them feel as though all this work that they're putting in to not just get the job done, but to get that training, to go seek that mentorship, to take those couple days at the industry event to try to go through some hands-on training. It's all worth it because they're able to deliver for you.
Matt, we only got a couple minutes left. Just like
I'm gonna hurry real quick here. Sorry, I talked too long. It's one of those things where you start these sessions and you think to yourself, "Gosh, how am I going to fill all this time?" And then you start talking and you get like halfway through. But I'm seriously like 80% of the way through, so we're good here. I think I only have 2 or 3 slides left, but thank you for that.
we got a couple minutes. Yeah.
The key is that there is always training required. We are in an industry that requires training constantly. There's always new technology. There's always some advancements, and part of the key to having a good technician is that they need to be not just experts in the technology, but expert enough to explain it. When you are trying to get somebody's iPhone enrolled and they need to set up some sort of MFA, you need to explain to them exactly what it is that they are doing. You're taking somebody completely non-technical and you need to be able to put in their terms what it is that you're doing so they understand why you're doing it. It's always that treadmill. It's always those things that you are working on and trying to improve. And that's the reason that people are in IT, because they want to learn about those new technologies. We're nerds. We like tinkering with things. We like solving problems. We like figuring out why things aren't working. We want to learn about the next thing. We talk about AI. I'm guessing everyone here has experimented, explored a little bit if they're not wholeheartedly using AI at this point. You have a passion for all those things that are out there. These are the reasons that you are in IT. These are the reasons all of your employees are in IT. And you need to capitalize on that by removing those barriers. When somebody wants to learn and wants to advance, you are making sure that they have the ability to do that. You are making sure that they're not just stuck where they are. Because when employees feel stuck, that's when they burn out.
Yep.
If they don't have time to, it's not even necessarily hobbies. If they don't have time to maybe learn on the job a little bit, to experience those new technologies, when they feel like they're stuck, when they feel like they are running that race with no finish line, how fast of a pace can they run when they realize this isn't actually a mile run, but this is a marathon? That's what leads to the burnout. So your responsibility is to cultivate this and make sure that your employees are ready. And you do that.
Matt, I hate to interrupt you, but we actually have to start the next session right at 1:15.
Sorry. That's it. I'll stop talking. I didn't talk fast enough. I'm sorry. Come find me if you have any questions.
This is a great session. Yeah, be sure and get in touch with Matt, with his connections right here, right? And we'll see you guys in the next session. Thanks, Matt. It was a
There's
great
more. I
talk.
can send the slides to anybody. I should have thought
Yeah,
faster.
absolutely. All right. Thanks,
Thank you.
everyone.